The research vessel, Kethvaron, moved through space like a dying star, its once bright hull now cracked and bleeding precious air into the cold darkness. Captain Zeekther pressed his six-fingered hand against the main viewing screen and watched. Small clouds of frozen atmosphere drift past like ghostly tears. His ship was dying, and he knew it. The bridge around him buzzed with quiet activity as his crew worked with the desperate focus of beings who understood their situation all too well. Warning lights flashed red and orange across every control panel, casting strange shadows on the faces of 12 different alien species who had been brought together by science and now faced death as one crew. Dr. Yelessa, her blue skin shimmering, with stress patterns that ran along her tentacle-like arms, bent over the communications console for what felt like the 100th time. Her large black eyes reflected the dancing lights of the equipment as she made another small adjustment to their distress beacon. The beacon had been sending the same message for 6 full days now, broadcasting their desperate plea across the galaxy in 17 different languages. "Still nothing," she said softly, her voice carrying the musical quality that made her species such natural diplomats. No response from any vessel within 300 light years. Zeekther nodded slowly. He had expected as much. This region of space was known for being empty, a vast stretch of nothing between the populated systems of the Galactic Cooperative. They had come here to study a strange gravitational anomaly that their sensors had detected from the safety of civilized space. The anomaly had turned out to be far more dangerous than their calculations had suggested. The exotic matter drive that powered their ship had been torn apart when they tried to study the anomaly too closely. One moment they had been recording fascinating readings about twisted spacetime, and the next their ship was tumbling helplessly through normal space with half their systems offline and their main drive reduced to expensive scrap metal. Commander Theshka, whose gray-green skin bore the ritual scars of the grim Nari warrior caste, looked up from the damage control station. Her 3 eyes moved independently as she scanned multiple displays at once, ability that made her people excellent fighters and even better engineers. "Life support is holding for now," she reported in her growling voice. "But the main atmospheric processor took heavy damage. We have perhaps 2 days of breathable air remaining, maybe less if we cannot stop the hull leaks." Science Officer Paklum, a tall being whose crystal-like body refracted the bridge lighting into rainbow patterns, turned from his station. His species communicated as much through color changes as through sound, and right now his crystalline form pulsed with deep purple hues that everyone recognized as worry. "The hull breach in Section 7 is getting worse," he said, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones that made his people such gifted scientists. "The emergency force fields are failing. If we lose that section completely, we will lose another 12% of our remaining atmosphere." Zeekther closed his eyes and tried to think. His people, the Velthari, were known throughout the galaxy for their calm wisdom and careful planning. They rarely made mistakes, and when they did, they usually had backup plans for their backup plans. But this situation was beyond anything they had prepared for. The gravitational anomaly that had destroyed their drive was still nearby. Its twisted space-time effects making it impossible for them to send faster-than-light communications. Their quantum distress beacon could only reach ships traveling through normal space, and the chances of anyone being close enough to help were very small. Dr. Yelessa suddenly straightened at her console, her tentacles moving in the rapid patterns. That indicated excitement. "Captain, I am detecting something unusual in the background radiation. There appears to be a small vessel, approximately 50 light hours away, moving on what looks like a supply route between star systems." Zeekther moved to her station quickly. "Can you determine their species or origin?" "Negative," Yelessa replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The vessel is quite small, perhaps a cargo ship or transport. It does not match any design in our databases. The energy signature is very primitive, using what appears to be fusion engines and basic life support systems. Commander Theshka growled softly, a sound that in her people meant either amusement or concern. Primitive vessels in this region could mean pirates or slavers. Many criminal organizations use older ships to avoid detection by cooperative patrols. Or it could mean explorers from a species not yet part of the cooperative. Pakalem added, his crystal body shifting to yellow hues that indicated hope mixed with caution. There are still many young civilizations pushing outward from their home systems. Zeekther considered their options. They could try to contact this unknown vessel, but doing so would reveal their helpless condition to beings whose intentions they could not know. On the other hand, they were already doomed without help, so the risk might be worth taking. Doctor, Yelesa, can you modify our distress signal to reach that vessel directly? Yes, Captain. I can focus the quantum beacon in their direction. However, our universal translators may have difficulty with their language if they are truly an unknown species. Do it. Include our basic mathematical constants and star position data. Any spacefaring species should be able to understand that we need help. Yelesa worked quickly, her tentacles moving across multiple controls at once. The distress beacon shifted its focus, concentrating its signal toward the distant vessel. The message was simple but desperate, a plea for aid from beings who understood. They were running out of time. For several hours, nothing happened. The unknown vessel continued on its path, showing no sign that it had received their message. Some of the crew began to prepare personal messages to their families, recording final words on data crystals that they hoped might someday reach home. Theshka worked tirelessly to slow the air leaks, using emergency patches and temporary force fields to buy them precious extra time. Pakalem ran calculations on their remaining resources, trying to find some way to extend their survival just a little longer. Dr. Yelesa continued to monitor the communications array, hoping against hope for some response from the void. Then, as their second day of crisis began, their communications console suddenly came alive with an incoming signal. The message was unlike anything in their databases, transmitted on frequencies that their equipment barely recognized. The universal translator struggled with the alien language, producing garbled fragments before finally managing a rough conversion. Unknown. Vessel, this is Earthship Liberty. Captain Jake Murphy commanding. I got your distress call, and I understand you folks are in some serious trouble out there. I am changing course to reach your position. Hold tight. I am coming to get you. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this impossible response. The signal had come from the primitive vessel they had detected, and its captain had actually understood their distress call, despite the language barriers. More surprising still, this being called Jake Murphy was apparently willing to risk his own ship to help complete strangers. Dr. Yelesa checked her readings 3 times before she believed them. Captain, that vessel has changed course. It is heading directly toward us, but the path it is taking leads straight through the gravitational anomaly that damaged our ship. Zeekther stared at the tactical display in amazement. No sane pilot would attempt such a passage, especially not in a primitive vessel with basic engines and limited protection. The gravitational forces alone should tear apart any ship not specifically designed for such stress. Are they responding to our follow-up transmissions? He asked. I have sent several messages requesting confirmation of their approach vector and offering to provide safer navigation data, Yelesa replied. Their response was quite brief. They said, and I quote, "Thanks for the nav data, but I know these parts pretty well." Murphy out. Commander Theshka made a sound that was definitely amusement this time. Either this Jake Murphy is the bravest being in the galaxy or the most foolish. Pakalem had been studying the sensor data from the approaching vessel. His crystal body now pulsed with rapid color changes that indicated deep concentration mixed with disbelief. "Captain, I have been analyzing their approach vector and speed. If my calculations are correct, this vessel is attempting to reach us in approximately 14 standard hours. No known technology should allow such a journey through that gravitational field." Ziegler looked around at his crew, seeing hope beginning to replace despair in their alien faces. They were still in desperate danger, still running out of air and time, but for the first time since their crisis began, they were not alone. In the void, someone had heard their call for help, and against all logic and reason, that someone was coming for them. Captain Jake Murphy was halfway through his morning coffee when the distress signal came through his communications array. The Liberty's cargo hold was packed with mining equipment bound for the outer colonies, and Jake had been looking forward to 3 more days of quiet space travel before reaching his destination. He had been running supply routes for almost 30 years, and distress calls were never good news. The signal itself was strange, unlike anything he had encountered before. His ship's computers struggled to decode the transmission, producing fragments of mathematical data mixed with what sounded like words and languages he had never heard. Jake leaned back in his pilot's chair and scratched his gray beard as he listened to the garbled message repeat itself. "Computer, run a full translation protocol on that signal," he said, reaching for his coffee mug. "And give me a position fix on the source." The Liberty's artificial intelligence was an old model, reliable but not particularly sophisticated. It took several minutes before the computer responded in its flat electronic voice. Translation partially successful. Message appears to be a distress call from multiple unknown sources. Transmitting vessel reports critical system failures and requests immediate assistance. Warning: source location is within the Kepler gravitational anomaly zone. Approach not recommended. Jake frowned and pulled up the navigation display. The anomaly zone was a twisted region of space where gravitational forces played havoc with normal physics. Most ships avoided it completely, and those that didn't often disappeared without a trace. The fact that someone was stranded inside, it made their situation much worse than a normal breakdown. "Computer, show me the exact position and give me a course plot." The holographic display showed the anomaly as a shifting red zone filled with dangerous gravitational currents. Deep inside it, a small blip marked the position of the distressed vessel. Jake studied the data for several minutes, running calculations in his head about fuel consumption, structural stress, and the probability of survival. The smart move would be to report the distress call to the Colonial Authority and let them decide what to do. They had bigger ships with better shielding, and they could probably organize a proper rescue mission within a week or 2. Of course, by then whoever was out there would probably be dead. Jake had never ignored a Mayday in his life, and he wasn't about to start now. "Computer, plot a course through the anomaly to that position. Use the deep navigation charts and calculate for maximum gravitational interference. Warning: proposed course has a 73% probability of hull breach or catastrophic system failure. Recommend alternative approach via outer navigation lanes." The outer lanes would take 4 days. These people don't have 4 days. Plot the direct course. Jake strapped himself into the pilot's seat and began powering up the Liberty's engines. The ship was old but tough, built for hauling cargo through dangerous space where newer vessels might fail. Her hull was reinforced with layers of composite armor, and her engines had been upgraded 3 times over the years. If any civilian ship could make it through the anomaly, it would be the Liberty. The first part of the journey was routine, just normal space travel toward the edge of the anomaly zone. Jake used the time to study everything his computer could tell him about the distress signal. The mathematical constants in the message were familiar, but the language patterns were completely unknown. Whoever had sent the signal was definitely not human. As the Liberty approached the anomaly boundary, Jake began receiving more transmissions from the stranded vessel. His computer's translation software was gradually learning to decode the alien language, and the messages became clearer with each transmission. The aliens were providing navigation data and warning him about dangerous gravitational currents, which told Jake that they were experienced space travelers, despite their current predicament. The first gravitational wave hit the Liberty like a giant hand trying to crush her hull. Jake felt the ship shudder around him as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the ship as various systems struggled to compensate for the impossible forces acting on them. Hull stress at 60% of tolerance, the computer announced. Recommend immediate course change? Negative. Continue on current heading. Reroute power from non-essential systems to structural integrity fields. Jake gripped the control. Stick tighter as another wave of twisted gravity swept over his ship. The Liberty groaned and creaked like an old wooden ship in a storm, but her reinforced frame held together. Jake had been through gravitational anomalies before, though never one this severe. The trick was to ride with the forces instead of fighting them, letting the ship flex and bend while maintaining just enough power to stay on course. The alien transmissions continued throughout his approach, with the computer providing increasingly accurate translations. Jake learned that the stranded vessel was called the HFY, and it carried a crew of 12 beings from something called the Galactic Cooperative. They had been studying the anomaly when their main drive failed, leaving them helpless and running out of air. Earthship Liberty, this is Captain Ziegther of the research vessel HFY, came a clear transmission as Jake's ship pushed deeper into the anomaly. We are grateful for your assistance, but you must understand the extreme danger of your current approach. Our sensors indicate your vessel is experiencing severe structural stress. Jake keyed his microphone and responded in his usual straightforward manner. Copy that, Captain Ziegther. I appreciate the warning, but the Liberty's tougher than she looks. How much time do you folks have left? Our life support systems are failing rapidly. We estimate less than 36 hours of breathable atmosphere remaining. Well then, I better get there in a hurry. Murphy out. Jake pushed the Liberty harder, diving deeper into the gravitational maelstrom than any sane pilot would attempt. The ship's hull began to make sounds he had never heard before. Metallic groans and creaks that suggested she was being stretched to her absolute limits. But the engines kept running, and the navigation computer kept reporting steady progress toward the alien vessel. The worst part of the journey came when Jake had to navigate through what the aliens called a gravity cascade, a region where space-time itself seemed to fold back on itself. The Liberty tumbled through forces that should have torn her apart, her hull plates flexing and bending in ways they were never designed to handle. Jake fought to maintain control as his ship spun through dimensions of gravitational stress that defied understanding. Hull breach in cargo bay 2, the computer reported with mechanical calm. Emergency force fields activated. Structural integrity at 41%. Reroute everything we've got to hull reinforcement, Jake ordered, his hands dancing over the emergency controls. And prepare the emergency patches for deployment. The Liberty burst through the final gravitational barrier, like a cork popping from a bottle, emerging into a relatively calm region of space where the alien vessel waited. Jake's first sight of the HFY took his breath away. The ship was enormous compared to his cargo hauler, its crystalline hull gleaming even through the cracks and damage that marked its hull. It looked like something from a dream, graceful and alien and completely unlike any human vessel. But it was also clearly dying. Atmosphere leaked from multiple hull breaches, forming small clouds of frozen gas around the ship. Sections of the hull had been torn away completely, exposing interior compartments to the vacuum of space. Emergency lights flickered across its surface like dying stars. Kethvaran, this is Murphy. I can see you folks are in some serious trouble. I'm going to dock with your ship and see what I can do to help. Captain Murphy, we are extremely grateful for your arrival, but I must warn you that our docking systems have been severely damaged. A safe connection may not be possible. Jake studied the alien ship through his view screen, noting the twisted metal around what looked like docking ports. A normal docking procedure would be impossible, but Jake had never been limited by normal procedures. Don't you worry about that, Captain. I've got some ideas. Just make sure your people are ready for a little shaking when I make contact. Jake maneuvered the Liberty close to the damaged alien vessel, studying the hull breaches and trying to determine the best approach. The Kethvaran was beautiful but fragile, built for scientific research rather than emergency repairs. The Liberty, on the other hand, was a working ship designed to handle rough treatment. Computer, prepare emergency docking clamps and load the explosive cutting charges. We're going to make our own docking port. Warning: explosive decompression of target vessel is highly probable with proposed docking method. Not if we do it. Right. Calculate the blast pattern to clear the debris without breaching their inner hull. Jake positioned his ship carefully against a section of the Kethvaran's hull that looked relatively stable. The two vessels moved together like dancers performing an intricate routine, one battered and practical, the other elegant and dying. As the Liberty's docking clamps locked onto the alien hull, Jake knew that the real work was just beginning. The explosive charges detonated with perfect precision, sending chunks of twisted metal spinning away into space. Jake watched through his helmet camera as the debris cleared, revealing a jagged but usable opening into the alien ship's hull. The blast had worked exactly as he had calculated, breaking through the damaged outer sections without compromising the inner pressure barriers. Kethvaran, this is Murphy. I've got us a way in. Sealing my side of the connection now. Jake worked quickly to attach an emergency airlock tunnel between his ship and the opening he had created. The device was a standard piece of emergency equipment that most cargo pilots carried, though few had ever used it under such extreme conditions. As the tunnel pressurized and sealed, Jake could hear the alien voices through his communicator, speaking in their musical languages with what sounded like amazement. Captain Murphy, our sensors indicate you have successfully established an atmospheric connection, came Captain Zeether's voice. However, we must warn you that several sections of our ship are contaminated with toxic gases from our damaged drive systems. Copy that. I've got breathing gear and hazmat protection. Just point me toward your most critical problems, and I'll see what I can do. Jake sealed his environmental suit and checked his portable air supply before opening the airlock. The first thing that struck him about the alien ship was how different everything looked. The corridors were wider than human standard, with curved walls that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. Strange symbols glowed softly along the walls, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy patterns. He didn't understand Dr. Yelesa. Met him at the airlock. Her blue skin marked with stress patterns that Jake's suit computer helpfully translated as extreme anxiety mixed with hope. She moved with fluid grace, despite the ship's failing artificial gravity, her tentacle-like arms gesturing toward the most damaged sections. Captain Murphy, I am Dr. Yelesa, xenobiologist and communications officer. We are honored by your presence, though I must express concern for your safety. The toxic contamination in sections 4 through 7 could prove fatal to carbon-based life forms. Jake grinned inside his helmet. Well, Doc, I'm definitely carbon-based, but I'm also pretty stubborn. Show me what we're dealing with. As they moved through the ship, Jake got his first good look at the alien crew. They were unlike anything he had ever imagined, beings of crystal and tentacle and shell, each species adapted to different environments and ways of thinking. Despite their exotic appearances, Jake could see the same expressions of worry and determination that he would expect from any crew facing disaster. The damage to the Cathvaron was extensive. The exotic matter drive had not simply failed, but had torn itself apart, flooding several sections with radiation and toxic gases that the ship's systems couldn't filter. Life support was failing in a cascade pattern, with each system failure putting more stress on the remaining equipment. Commander Deshka, the Grimnari warrior, was working to seal hull breaches using temporary force field generators. Jake watched her work with professional appreciation, noting how she prioritized the repairs based on atmospheric loss rates rather than simple visibility of damage. "You folks have good emergency procedures," Jake told her through his suit communicator. "But you're thinking like scientists instead of mechanics. Sometimes you've got to be willing to break a few things to fix the bigger problem." Deshka looked at him with her 3 independent eyes, expression that Jake's computer labeled as curious skepticism. "What do you propose, human Jake Murphy?" "Well, for starters, you're trying to save systems that are already doomed. That whole section where your drive used to be, we need to seal it off completely and write it off. Then we can focus on keeping the rest of the ship livable." Jake pulled out a device that looked primitive compared to the alien technology around them. A simple plasma cutter that he used for cargo modifications. "This won't make pretty cuts, but it'll get the job done fast. Help me isolate the contaminated sections." Working together, Jake and Deshka began cutting through bulkheads and sealing off the most damaged areas of the ship. The work was dangerous and exhausting, requiring them to move through sections where the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly and toxic gases leaked from ruptured conduits. Jake's approach to the repairs amazed the aliens. Where they saw complex problems requiring careful analysis and precise solutions, he saw opportunities for quick fixes using whatever materials were available. He used cargo strapping to reinforce weakened hull sections, medical tubing to reroute, coolant lines and emergency patches designed for his own ship to seal alien technology. "Your repair methods are highly unconventional," observed Science Officer Paklam, his crystal body pulsing with colors that indicated fascination. "According to our engineering databases, several of your solutions should not work." "Maybe not according to your databases," Jake replied as he welded a patch over a hull breach using a technique that violated several safety protocols. "But out here in the real world, anything that works is good engineering. The most dangerous." Part of the operation came when Jake had to venture outside both ships to repair damage to the Cathvaran's hull that was beyond the reach of their internal systems. The alien crew watched in horror as he suited up for a spacewalk in the middle of a gravitational anomaly, using equipment they considered barely adequate for normal space operations. Jake's environmental suit was a standard colonial survey model, designed for routine maintenance work rather than the extreme conditions around the anomaly. But he had modified it over the years with additional shielding and backup systems, turning it into something that could survive almost anything space could throw at him. "Captain Murphy, I must strongly advise against external repairs in our current location," Captain Ziether said over the communicator. "The gravitational stress could tear your suit apart without warning." "Appreciate the concern, Captain, but I've been in tighter spots than this. Besides, somebody's got to fix those hull breaches from the outside, and I don't see anyone else volunteering." Jake connected his safety line and opened the airlock, stepping out into a region of space where physics itself seemed unreliable. The gravitational forces tugged at his suit in constantly changing directions, trying to pull him away from the ship's hull. But Jake had learned long ago how to work in unstable gravity, using the forces instead of fighting them. The repairs took 6 hours of continuous work. Jake welded patches over hull breaches, rerouted damaged systems through jury-rigged connections, and even installed several components cannibalized from his own ship's backup systems. Each task required him to work in conditions that should have been impossible for a human to survive. Dr. Yelesa monitored his vital signs throughout the spacewalk, amazed by what her instruments were telling her. Jake's heart rate and breathing remained steady despite the extreme stress, and his brain activity showed patterns of focused concentration that her species associated with deep meditation. His physiological responses are remarkable, she reported to Captain Zichther. According to my readings, he is processing multiple complex calculations simultaneously, while maintaining perfect awareness of his environment. His species must have evolved under extraordinary selection pressures. When Jake finally returned to the ship, the aliens gathered around him with expressions of awe and gratitude. The repairs he had completed would buy them enough time to reach a safe port, though the Kethvaron would never be the same graceful vessel she once was. Captain Murphy, what you have accomplished today defies explanation, Zichther said formally. You have saved not only our lives, but our mission. How can we possibly repay such a debt? Jake removed his helmet and wiped sweat from his forehead, grinning at the assembled alien crew. No debt necessary, Captain. Spacers look out for each other, no matter what species they happen to be. Now, let's get your people transferred to my cargo hold where the air's better, and we'll head for the nearest port. The transfer took several more hours as the alien crew gathered their essential equipment and personal belongings. Jake converted his cargo hold into a makeshift passenger compartment, using emergency life support units and portable gravity generators to create a livable environment for 12 very different alien species. As the Liberty pulled away from the crippled Kethvaron, Jake took one last look at the alien research vessel through his viewscreen. She had been beautiful once, a testament to advanced engineering and scientific purpose. Now she drifted empty through the anomaly. Her mission ended, but her crew saved. Where to, folks? Jake asked as he plotted their course out of the gravitational maze. I know a good port about 3 weeks away, where they ask few questions and fix anything that flies. The nearest galactic cooperative station would be more appropriate, Captain Zichther replied. Our governments will want to know about this first contact between our species. Jake nodded and adjusted his navigation computer. Cooperative station. It is, though I should probably warn you, I don't know much about diplomatic protocols. I'm just a cargo pilot who happened to be in the neighborhood. As the Liberty began its journey toward civilized space, carrying the first humans and aliens to travel together in recorded history, Jake couldn't help but smile. The cargo hold of the Liberty had been transformed into something resembling a small space station. Jake had rigged up individual environmental controls for each of the alien species, using spare parts and emergency equipment to create living spaces that could accommodate beings with very different needs. The Grimnari warrior Theshka required higher gravity and cooler temperatures, while the crystalline Pakulum needed specific mineral supplements in his atmosphere. During the first week of their journey, the aliens spent most of their time recovering from their ordeal and studying their human rescuer. Dr. Yelesa set up a small laboratory in one corner of the cargo hold, using portable equipment to conduct the first xenobiological analysis of a human being. Her findings fascinated and puzzled her in equal measure. Captain Murphy, would you mind if I asked you some questions about human physiology? She inquired during one of Jake's visits to check on his passengers. Your species exhibits several characteristics that seem impossible according to established biological principles. Jake settled into a chair he had bolted to the deck and accepted a cup of what Pakulum called crystalline tea, though it tasted more like liquid starlight. Fire away, Doc. Though I should warn you, I'm not much of a scientist myself. Your bone density is approximately 3 times greater than any known sapient species, Yelesa began, consulting her readings. Your muscle tissue contains redundant Oxygen storage systems that allow you to function in low-atmosphere environments for extended periods. Most remarkably, your brain shows activity patterns, suggesting you process multiple complex calculations simultaneously while maintaining casual conversation. Jake chuckled and sipped his tea. Well, you grow up on a world like Earth. You learn to adapt, or you don't survive long enough to have kids. My planet's got gravity that would crush most folks, weather that changes faster than you can plan for, and critters that think humans make good snacks. Commander Veshka, who had been listening from her own environmental zone, made the growling sound that indicated intense interest. Tell us about these predators, human Jake. What manner of creatures threaten your species? Oh, we've got everything you could imagine, and a few things you probably couldn't. Bears that weigh half a ton and can run faster than most vehicles. Sharks with teeth like knives and electrical systems that can stun prey from a distance. Poisonous snakes, venomous spiders, big cats that hunt in packs. And that's just the stuff on land. Jake spent the next hour describing Earth's wildlife, much to the amazement of his alien audience. The concept of a world where large predators shared the same environment as intelligent beings was difficult for them to understand. In most civilized systems, dangerous creatures had been relocated or eliminated long before sapient species developed space travel. But how did your civilization develop under such conditions? Asked Captain Ziegther. Surely the constant threat of predation would prevent the formation of stable societies. Actually, it worked the other way around, Jake explained. Having to deal with all those threats made us better at working together. When there's a saber-toothed tiger outside your cave, you put aside your differences with your neighbors real quick. Plus, it taught us to think on our feet and make the best of bad situations. Science Officer Pecklum had been analyzing Jake's ship during their conversations, and his findings were equally surprising. Captain Murphy, your vessel's technology appears primitive by cooperative standards, yet it demonstrates remarkable adaptability. Systems designed for one purpose have been modified to serve 3 or 4 different functions. Jake nodded proudly. The Liberty's been my home for 20 years. You live with something that long. You learn all its tricks and add a few of your own. Most of the modifications I made myself during port calls or while drifting between jobs. This modification philosophy is fascinating, Packlum continued, his crystal body shifting to golden hues that indicated deep thought. Your species appears to value flexibility over efficiency. Most civilized races prefer optimized systems with clearly defined purposes. Optimized systems work great until something goes wrong, Jake replied. Out here in the deep black, things go wrong all the time. A ship that can only do one thing perfectly is a ship that'll get you killed when you need it to do something else. During the second week of their journey, Jake began sharing stories of human history and culture. The aliens were particularly fascinated by accounts of human exploration and expansion into space. The concept of venturing into the unknown with primitive technology struck them as both admirable and slightly insane. Your species achieved interstellar travel using fusion rockets and basic life support systems? Veshka asked incredulously. The margins for error must have been enormous. Oh, they were, Jake confirmed cheerfully. Lot of good people died in those early days. Ships lost to navigation errors, life support failures, reactor malfunctions. But we kept going anyway. Humans have this tendency to see something dangerous and think, I wonder what's on the other side of that. Dr. Yelesa found this aspect of human psychology particularly intriguing. Most species develop space travel only after achieving complete mastery of their home environment. The idea of venturing into space while still facing challenges at home is almost unprecedented. Well, Doc, if we'd waited until Earth was completely safe and predictable, we'd still be sitting in our caves, waiting for the weather to improve. Sometimes you've got to take risks to move forward. Jake's casual attitude toward danger became a recurring theme in their conversations. He described space travel mishaps that would have traumatized other species as minor inconveniences. Equipment failures, navigation errors, and life support problems were simply part of the job to him. I remember one time about 5 years ago, my reactor started acting up 3 days out from the nearest port. Jake told them during dinner one evening. Temperature readings going crazy, containment field fluctuating. Most pilots would have declared an emergency and hoped for rescue. What did you do? Asked Captain Ziegther, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer would be typically human. Well, I figured I had 2 choices. Sit there and wait to die, or crack open the reactor and see if I could fix it myself. So I suited up, opened the containment chamber, and started troubleshooting. Turned out to be a loose connection in the magnetic bottle assembly. Took about 6 hours to repair, working in a radiation field that probably shortened my life by a few years. The aliens exchanged glances that Jake had learned to recognize as their version of mutual amazement. The idea of personally performing repairs on an active fusion reactor was so far outside their experience that they had difficulty processing it. Did you not consider the probability of reactor breach during your repairs? Packlem asked. Sure I did. Figured it was about 50-50, whether I'd fix it or blow myself to atoms. But those were better odds than waiting for help that probably wasn't coming. Commander Veshka had been studying human military history using the Liberties database, and she brought up the subject during their 3rd week together. Captain Murphy, I have been reading about your species' approach to warfare. Your tactical doctrines seem to emphasize improvisation and individual initiative rather than careful planning and coordination. That's because most of our enemies throughout history have been other humans, Jake explained. When you're fighting people who think the same way you do, the side that can adapt fastest usually wins. Detailed battle plans are great until the first shot is fired, then everything goes to hell, and you have to make it up as you go along. This philosophy extends to your space exploration as well, Beshka observed. Your colonial expansion followed no apparent systematic pattern. Humans seem to spread in all directions simultaneously, establishing settlements wherever they find suitable worlds, pretty much. We've got colonies on ice worlds, desert planets, high-gravity rocks that would crush most folks, and gas-giant moons where you can't breathe the air. If humans can survive there, somebody will try to build a settlement. As they neared cooperative space, Jake began preparing his alien passengers for their arrival. He explained what little he knew about diplomatic protocols and helped them compose reports for their respective governments. The significance of first contact between humanity and the Galactic Cooperative was not lost on anyone aboard the Liberty. Captain Murphy, you must understand that your actions have created a situation of enormous political importance. Captain Ziegther explained. When we arrive at the cooperative station, there will be extensive debriefings and formal contact procedures. Jake nodded thoughtfully. I figured as much. Though I should probably mention that I'm not exactly official humanities representative or anything. I'm just a cargo pilot who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Nevertheless, you are the first human to make contact with our civilization, Dr. Yelesa pointed out. Your government will undoubtedly want to establish formal diplomatic relations based on this initial meeting. Well, then I guess I better make sure I don't embarrass the whole human race, Jake said with a grin. Though knowing humans, they'll probably send proper diplomats next time who actually know what they're doing. The cooperative station materialized ahead of them like a small city floating in space, its crystalline towers and organic curves stretching for kilometers in all directions. Jake had seen some impressive space stations during his years of cargo hauling, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer scale and beauty of this alien construction. Thousands of ships moved in carefully orchestrated traffic patterns around the station, representing dozens of different species and technological approaches. "Liberty, this is Cooperative Station Harmony Control," came a translated voice over the communications array. "You are transmitting identification codes for the research vessel Kethvaran, but our sensors show a completely different vessel configuration. Please explain your status." Captain Ziegther moved to the communications panel with Jake's permission and began the complex process of explaining their situation. The conversation took over an hour as station officials tried to understand how a primitive human vessel had rescued an advanced cooperative research ship from the middle of a gravitational anomaly. Within minutes of docking, the Liberty was surrounded by cooperative officials representing multiple species and governmental departments. Jake found himself at the center of a diplomatic storm as beings he couldn't identify asked him questions about everything from human technology to political systems to trade capabilities. Dr. Yelesa's detailed report on human physiology became the foundation for intense scientific debate throughout the station. Her findings suggested that humans represented a completely new category of sapient species, one that had evolved under conditions that most civilized worlds would consider uninhabitable. "The implications are staggering," she explained to the assembled scientists during her formal presentation. "This species has developed space travel and complex technology while retaining the physical adaptations necessary for survival on a high-gravity death world. Their bone density, muscle development, and neurological patterns suggest capabilities far beyond anything in our databases." The political implications proved even more complex. Captain Ziegther's report to the Cooperative Council described humans as a species that treated impossible situations as minor inconveniences. His detailed sensor logs from Jake's rescue operation showed a primitive vessel surviving gravitational forces that should have destroyed it, performing repairs under conditions that no other known species could endure. "Council members, you must understand the significance of what we witnessed," Ziegther addressed the assembled representatives. "This human, Jake Murphy, approached problems with a combination of technical innovation and personal courage that defies all established protocols. When faced with a situation that would require extensive planning and specialized equipment by any cooperative species, he simply improvised solutions using available materials. The scientific community reacted with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. Dr. Packlam's analysis of the Liberty's technological modifications became required reading for engineers throughout cooperative space. The concept of constantly adapting and improving existing systems rather than replacing them with optimized alternatives represented a completely foreign approach to technology. Human engineering philosophy appears to prioritize resilience over efficiency, Packlam reported to the Technical Analysis Board. Their vessels are designed to continue functioning even when multiple systems fail simultaneously. Captain Murphy's ship survived conditions that would have destroyed any comparable cooperative vessel. Commander Theshka's military analysis created equally intense debate among the warrior castes of various species. Her detailed study of human combat doctrine and exploration patterns suggested a species that actively sought out dangerous situations as opportunities for growth and advancement. The humans do not simply accept risk as a necessary component of progress, she explained to a gathering of Grimnari military leaders. They actively embrace uncertainty and use it as a tool for innovation. Their entire expansion into space was accomplished using technology that any rational species would consider inadequate for such endeavors. Meanwhile, Jake found himself in the unusual position of being both honored guest and subject of intense scrutiny. Cooperative officials wanted to know everything about human civilization, from population figures to technological capabilities to political structures. Jake did his best to answer their questions, though he frequently had to admit that his knowledge as a cargo pilot was limited. "I'm probably not the best person to ask about human government," he told a panel of political analysts during one of many debriefing sessions. "I spend most of my time in space hauling cargo between colonies. What I can tell you is that humans value independence and personal freedom above most everything else." The question of formal diplomatic contact became increasingly urgent as news of the rescue spread throughout cooperative space. Some council members advocated for immediate establishment of trade relations and military alliances with this remarkable new species. Others worried about the unpredictable nature of beings who considered dangerous situations to be routine challenges. Dr. Yelesa found herself appointed as the primary human specialist for the cooperative, despite having only 3 weeks of direct contact experience. Her recommendations would help shape the first official diplomatic mission to Earth, and the weight of that responsibility was not lost on her. "We must approach humanity with great care," she advised the Council. "They are clearly a species of remarkable capabilities, but their decision-making processes are unlike anything in our experience. They appear to make critical choices based on immediate assessment rather than extended analysis." The debate continued for weeks as Jake waited for permission to complete his original cargo delivery. He used the time to explore the station and learn about the various species that made up the Galactic Cooperative. The diversity was staggering, with beings adapted to every conceivable environment and way of life. What surprised Jake most was how carefully controlled everything seemed to be. Every aspect of life on the station was regulated and optimized for maximum efficiency and safety. Traffic moved in predetermined patterns. Environmental systems maintained perfect conditions for each species, and potential conflicts were prevented through elaborate protocols and procedures. "Don't you folks ever just wing it?" Jake asked Captain Zeke during one of their conversations. "I mean, all this planning and coordination is impressive, but what happens when something unexpected comes up?" "Unexpected situations are prevented through careful analysis and preparation," Zeke replied. "When problems do arise, they are addressed through established emergency protocols developed over thousands of years of spacefaring experience." "But what if your protocols don't cover the specific problem you're facing?" Zeke considered this question for several minutes before responding. "Such situations are extremely rare. The cooperative has encountered virtually every possible scenario during our expansion across the galaxy." Jake couldn't help but smile at this response. It was exactly the kind of thinking that would get you killed in human space, where unexpected problems were a daily occurrence and survival depended on your ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. The breakthrough in the diplomatic debates came when Jake volunteered to carry the first cooperative mission to Earth aboard the Liberty. His offer surprised everyone, particularly since official protocols would normally require the construction of a specially designed diplomatic vessel. "Captain Murphy, while we appreciate your offer, surely you understand that first contact between our civilizations requires more formal arrangements," one of the council representatives explained. "Maybe so," Jake replied, "but I'm heading back to human space anyway, and the Liberty's got room for passengers. Besides, wouldn't it be better to have someone along who already knows both sides? I can handle the introductions and keep everyone from shooting each other by mistake." The suggestion violated every diplomatic protocol in the cooperative archives, but it also made practical sense. Jake had already proven his ability to work with alien species under extreme conditions, and his ship had demonstrated remarkable reliability despite its primitive appearance. After extensive debate, the Council agreed to Jake's proposal. A small diplomatic team would accompany him back to Earth, with Dr. Yelesa serving as chief xenobiologist and Captain Zeke as official representative of the cooperative government. As preparations for departure began, Jake sent a priority message to Earth Colonial Authority. informing them that he was bringing home some very important passengers who wanted to establish formal relations with humanity. His message, transmitted across interstellar space to waiting government officials, was characteristically direct. Earth Control, this is Captain Jake Murphy, aboard the cargo vessel Liberty. I've got some alien diplomats who want to talk trade and friendship agreements with our government. They're good people who know their business, and I think we can work something out that benefits everyone involved. Request priority clearance for Sol System and instructions on where to bring our guests for the official welcome party. The response from Earth came back within hours, though Jake suspected it had triggered some intense emergency meetings among government.